All right, welcome to episode 22 of the Retro Game Club podcast. And another person who has broken computers always is Hugh.
Yeah. One time I made a mistake. I didn't put the little mounting things, like you have a motherboard in the case, and the case had kind of raised parts to screw the board into. So I didn't think I needed the extra little risers. You know, those little tiny 1 millimeter risers.
Yeah, little copper things. Yeah.
That blew up.
So it was directly on metal.
Yeah, it was one of my first projects. Yeah.
I wonder if you could even use a macaroni or something to hold it.
Yeah, I thought the case was designed to, because of the way it had these raised spots for you to attach the motherboard. Mm-hmm. I thought it was safe.
And then you just saw arcing back and forth, or you smelled ozone.
Well, I mean, it didn't really boot. I mean, I think whatever failsafe was on the motherboard kicked in.
I have a dumber story than that. I saved up my nickels and dimes with my first or second job for a dual processor Pentium 166 motherboard. Right. And it didn't quite boot up correctly. And for some reason, I got the idea that the BIOS chip was in backwards. And so I flipped that around, and that just kind of melted.
Yeah, that's a bad one.
I was 18. I convinced, I forget the name, Motherboards Express, something like that. Convinced them to take that back. But what's been going on?
Let's see. I posted a little article on my site. Maybe we'll post in the show notes about how to work with 6-button controllers on the Sega Genesis, because I didn't really know how to do that. So I wrote a tutorial and some sample code, and then if you scroll all the way down, you can download a ROM that is just like a controller debugger that I wrote.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's like this little ROM, and you can I have a little really bad, because I'm not good at art, bad representation of a controller. You can see what buttons were pressed, mm-hmm. and then just a whole bunch of debug data that's labeled, so you can, if you're trying to debug how a controller is or is not working, it's actually kind of handy for that. I was having fun with it, trying hey, what is the Atari 2600 controller register as when you plug it in, and that kind of stuff. And it was also kind of neat for testing out Genesis clone systems too. I've been using this thing on everything just for kicks. And then also, if you have an emulator, I think now whenever I install a new Genesis emulator, the first thing I'm going to do is fire up my own test ROM to make sure I have the button mappings right.
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, where I said this would be handy.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So this it looks like a lot, but I really pretty much wrote this while watching football, because most of the football games this weekend were pretty boring.
Is there something where you can is there a Jpeg to Genesis graphics program where you could just from Google Images find a Genesis controller picture and then convert it to?
So that's actually the next thing I'm going to work on.
Oh, really?
So it's funny you mention that. Yeah, because I did this demo game, and the game's not any good or anything, but it took me a really long time to do all the graphics and scenery. And part of it is I could do an okay image in Paint or whatever, GIMP, let's say. Mm-hmm. But then, you have to convert it to a Genesis tile set and Genesis palettes. The hard part's the palettes. If I took an image off Google, so let's say I got a picture of, what picture's been in the news recently?
Alabama.
Alabama. So I have a picture of Alabama, and you could scan it, you could read it, and then you could convert it to tiles, and then you probably want to do some compression where a lot of the tiles can be repeat, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to create a pattern map for those tiles, so you're not loading 15 of the same tile in a row, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
And then each time you discover a new, I already have a thing right now where I can run an image through and it converts it to tiles, and then maps the colors to 16 colors. So, but the image has more than 16 colors. It tries to map a 17th and 18th color, right? And that doesn't work on the Genesis unless you break into multiple palettes and blah blah blah. So I was going to write a program that was an extension of this image converter I have to also do the pattern map, and then kind of figure out what the color set is, what are these 16 colors that are closest to the these. So I could take this high res photo of Alabama, what if you 320 by 224 mm-hmm. photo of Alabama, and churn it into a bunch of tiles, figure out what colors and maps, and that could be a background layer. And then on, foreground layer, you can have a different image with, 16 colors and so on. So yeah, it's actually something I want to tackle. It's not really hard. It's just time consuming.
Too bad it's not 6502, because there's a few of these for Apple II already. So you would have had some of your work already done there.
Yeah, I'm sure someone did one of these already, but part of it was me trying to learn how to do it.
Yeah,
and this dorky controller that I made, which is sort of maybe loosely inspired off the, one of the Wii controllers. Like the images for the buttons and stuff on there, I use my tile converter that I wrote.
Speaking of GIMP, you hear it? Someone forked it to change its name to make it more family friendly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't need to know that either.
Yeah, so there's going to be an exact same version, but it's going to be called Glimpse. So you have that in your life now.
But, yeah, it's I see that.
That's one of those things that could almost be one of our news items, but not quite.
I always thought it was like a Pulp Fiction shout out. I didn't realize they were. I mean, I'm sure the creator of GIMP was not using it. Was not meaning to insult anyone.
It actually means something.
It was a funny acronym, and probably, I would suspect Pulp Fiction was more of an influence on them.
It's a new image manipulation program.
Yeah.
GIMP.
Yeah. And I'm still trying to get rid of this junk box that I have, but it has better stuff now. I actually added a couple 5 1/4-inch RPGs, if that's your thing.
Nice.
They take up too much space. They just take up too much space, man. But these were games that I saw other people trying to sell on eBay for $40 or $50. They didn't get any bids.
Mm-hmm.
And when I put them up for $1 on eBay, I got no bids. So it tells you a little bit about how much people are willing to pay for 5 1/4-inch RPGs.
So, how are you trying to get rid of this? Is it through the show, or is it through?
It's through
anything.
Anyone listening to the show that wants to PayPal me the price of a flat rate shipping box.
Huh?
It's not a giveaway. I have this box with some random gaming stuff that you can get for the low price of nothing.
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with the show. You just happen to have a show that someone might be interested.
I happen to have it, and what's going to end up happening is if I don't get rid of it through the show, I'm just going to bring it to Midwest Gaming Classic and ask any vendor if they'll give me $5 for it.
Yep.
And they'll probably see the 5 1/4-inch games and think, oh, I can probably get more than $5 for those.
You could go in there and make it rain floppy disks.
I could. Between these two games, there's about 15 or so floppy disks.
That might be funny. Just do that and run
and then,
away.
The next thing, before I do this image converter, I might do the image converter first, but I was sort of playing around with this crazy idea of learning how to do team player development, and it's hard because I find emulators don't have very good team player support. So I looked, and I mentioned I own 2 team players, and I do, because I'm a crazy person. And I do have exactly 8 Sega Genesis controllers. I went through my giant bag of controllers, and I have 8. 3 6-button, 5 3-button. So I think I know what my next programming project's going to be, is just seeing if I can somehow come up with anything that demonstrates how to do 8 controllers at once.
And we keep talking about trying to test out NetPlay on RetroArch. Maybe if you convert that into a ROM, that we could try it with that too. So you could try it with a real team player and then a virtual one.
Yeah. I mean, it's just basically, the first iteration I think is just going to be, it's just going to have 8 miniature controllers on the screen. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to highlight whatever buttons it sees being pressed. Because that's pretty much the easiest thing I can think of. And then maybe
like a 1-2 switch type thing, 1-2 team player.
Yeah, just a thing to just to say, do you have 8 things hooked up? I don't want to spend this whole time talking about Genesis programming. I'm just sort of concerned that I might not get everything done in it might take more than one frame to read all 8 controllers.
Oh.
So I kind of go look at some games that use 8 players. And one of them, there's only one action game, I think. Well, there's a soccer game, so it's action, and then there's a basketball game.
But you don't know how fast they play.
Yeah, I want to see how fast they play. Because obviously the golf game, you don't care so much because you're not you're literally just assigning, you're doing one controller at a time. You're not trying to read input from all 8 controllers at once. And I was actually thinking like it would be a cool way to build like a trivia game. Like 8-player trivia or something along those lines, or I don't know what else.
What's that one game, like Cooking Mama, where you like have to help each other cook? It's kind of like
I try to think of some way to make like trivia where it's both competitive and team oriented. I don't know.
You could make Tetris 8.
I could, and I could get sued.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Nintendo's taking down more ROM sites, so
just add it to the list.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, let's see. Today I got a email from Amazon saying to expect my Sega Mini on September 23rd, which is kind of exciting. That's right around the corner. We'll see if that actually happens. And it was a weird, like, no image. I don't even think HTML email. So who knows? It could be some kind of Nigerian prince trying to steal my Genesis. But I finally got. I've had this old laptop for a long time. It's one of the reasons why our listeners can hear a giant fan in the background, because it takes off louder than a PlayStation Pro. But it doesn't work with my microphone, so I'm still on the old laptop. And this weekend I went to Disclosure Detroit, which was a fun event. One of my buddies talked me into going, and it's just it was the first time this event happened, and it was a like go and talk about aliens and time travel and free energy and sci-fi stuff. And whether you like that stuff or believe anything or not, it was a riot, and there was a bar there, so hard not to have fun.
I would need to go to the bar if I went to one of those.
Yes, it was very entertaining. It was in downtown Detroit. It was like $5 to get in, so why not? And that's about it. Before the show, we were just talking about how work keeps getting in my way of finishing my programming projects, which are actually game-related as well, but I don't want to go into them until I'm a bit further into them. But that's about it. It's been longer than usual since we've recorded, so I've actually been kind of itching to hit record for the podcast, actually. But yeah, that's about it for me. I guess we should probably start this thing, huh?
Yeah. Atari Lynx 30th birthday programming competition. I forgot that the Lynx also was a 89 release. Same time as the game. I guess we could probably be doing. Was Game Boy 88 or 89?
I think that was 80. Oh.
Might have been 80. This is all stuff I should know. But anyhow, over on AtariGamer.com, they have like this. Is this still going, or did we miss this?
We missed this. So I put this in a save for next week list before, not realizing there was a date tied to it. So had we talked about this before September 1st, you could submit a Lynx game for a contest on Atari Gamer for Lynx's 30th birthday.
Mm-hmm. And these games look pretty. Just the couples. They have about a dozen games, and they look pretty nice. There's some really fun-looking stuff, and it's not like all just by one or two people. And there's a lot of. I think they're all by someone different.
Yeah, and they have time to. You still have. Or there's time for them to vote, so I don't think all the games are up here yet. They announced the winner at the end of this month.
No, they just changed it. October 2019, they said.
Oh, nice. Good.
This site has I really haven't checked out this site before. They have some really awesome wallpaper, too.
Yeah, I'm surprised this hasn't... I guess they don't have much news on this site, so that's why I never really landed on it before.
Mm-hmm.
But really cool thing. And I don't see what the prize is for this.
I believe it is the honor of winning.
Yeah, you're not going to become a millionaire?
No, I don't think anyone became a millionaire developing Atari Lynx games. Not even Atari, perhaps.
You win one of Nolan Bushnell's hot tubs he used to have meetings in or something.
Something like that, yeah. Although I guess the Lynx would have been after his time there.
Oh yeah, far after. I mean, Lynx is pretty much a purchased IP that Atari got so they could put some of their own stuff on it. Really, right? Like they didn't design it; they bought it.
Yeah, I thought they did, but I'm probably wrong.
No, I used to know the whole story of that, but I'm bad with dates and names, so there you go.
Well, I mean, I always think Atari, because Atari had a lot of different designs for, computers and consoles that didn't all come out. So I just sort of assumed they must have designed it because they had so many other designs, but that could be true. But they did not.
It was designed by Epix.
Okay.
Yeah. Good old Wikipedia.
Good old Epix, who, if they made NES games, would still be in business today.
Yes. If they didn't design the Lynx, they'd still be in business today.
So some more Atari stuff in the news.
Yeah, this came up on my feed too. This is on Thingiverse, and if many people probably don't know Thingiverse, I don't even know how I know of it since I don't have a 3D printer. It's pretty much GitHub for 3D designs for your 3D printers. And this particular thing I landed on is an Atari 2600 SD card slot mount. So if you picture your original 2600, with wood grain and all, this is just an adapter that fits right in the cart slot to let you put your SD card in there for, it's specifically for some certain, for the Harmony cartridge.
Yeah.
So, pretty neat. I'd like to see if, it'd be interesting if someone wrote in if they've actually done any of these, Thingiverse projects.
Yeah, I've never seen an EverDrive for the 2600 before. So I guess that's what this essentially is, right? Like EverDrive, making
pretty much,
like
yeah.
An EverDrive for the 2600. I guess because things can emulate the 2600 well enough that there's not much of a need for it, maybe.
Yeah.
Of course, they also have. They have Nintendo EverDrives, and Nintendo's been pretty well emulated for a long time. So who knows?
Pretty neat, yeah. So this one I put in right before, so I don't know if you got a chance to look at this, but
I did
not. LaunchBox 10 launched, and I don't know, I didn't spend enough time researching all the new features of LaunchBox 10, but LaunchBox for Android is official now, which is pretty neat because before it was only for Windows. So those that don't know, LaunchBox is pretty much an emulator launcher. So if you don't want to use RetroArch's libretro and you want to use the full MAME or full, Flycast or something, you use LaunchBox for a slick front end, and now you can do it on an Android device. And they show a really cool test on like a Samsung S10, and everything runs beautifully. So good on them. And so that's just a video. I couldn't find an actual article.
Doom 64 Reborn. That's not the name of the game. Doom 64 is Reborn on the Switch. Getting visual upgrades. Are they going to fix the lighting? That's the only reason I could never finish this game. Like, I was always I could never see it.
Geez, it's been so long since I played this one, simply because I never have time to go back and fix my N64 emulator.
Yeah.
And my N64 is currently boxed up. So it's been a while. I used to own this.
Yeah.
I
I still
remember
do. It's
loving
here.
it.
I have a shelf of all Doom games. I guess with some Quake and Wolfenstein too. And I still have this game. I just never ever play it because I can't. It just doesn't look right. I mean, like the contrast or color, whatever. I don't know what the right term is because I'm not a graphics guy. If you've seen anything I've worked on, you know I'm not a graphics guy. It's like almost staring into blackness the entire time you're playing it. I can never make anything out on it.
The 64 has that reputation, but I always liked how the 64 looks, so I know I'm in the minority there. But it's good. So is this the first time this has been re-released since? Wow.
Yeah, it's probably a big licensing mess behind it, because I'm sure, someone, obviously I don't think it developed it. It's not just a port of Doom. I mean, it's like an original Doom game. Different monsters, a little bit different weapons.
32 new levels.
Yeah, it still is Doom, but it's like a whole, new Doom game.
Yeah. Yeah. Chances are I'll have to pick that one up. I'm sure it won't be too pricey.
And Super Nintendo games on Switch. These are free if you have
the $20 a year online.
Okay. Selection's not bad. I mean, I thought it would just be like, here's what we put on the Super Nintendo Classic, but this is different. There's some Super Nintendo Classic games on here. There's some, what I'll just call shovelware games on here, to be blunt. And then there's a couple, like, sleepers. There's Breath of Fire. That's, I think, an RPG that most people haven't tried. There's Super EDF, which I seem to remember being okay. And that's not on previous collections. And then Puyo Puyo 2.
Is Demon's Crest any good? I heard a lot of people were excited for that one.
I don't recall it.
I don't remember that one. I mean, to me, out of all the games to know on here, Mario Kart is so hard to go back and play. It's just so slow.
It is, yeah. I tried playing with my kids, and they were severely underwhelmed by it. And I was mostly like, okay, I already have the Super Nintendo Classic. If I was to get this, what would I be getting access to that I don't already have and really want? And really, of this list, like Breath of Fire is maybe the only thing I would play through.
And also, if you don't have a portable emulated system, then you get convenience, with like the Switch Lite.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of at this point where I mostly only play RPGs. So I would play Link to the Past on here, and I'd play, Breath of Fire, but I don't have a lot of interest in the other games on here. Maybe Super Metroid, but I have that on 3 different systems now.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you're already paying for the online service, like I really like Splatoon 2, so I got the online service. So by default, I have this. Worse things have happened to me.
Yeah.
What is next? This next one was yours.
Yeah, text adventure game creation jam. The Adventuron CaveJam 2019. And it's not just like, it's the sort of like graphical text adventure games, which I know is a confusing term, but the type of game where there's a picture on top and then it's text adventure on the bottom. And it's just a competition, to make these style of games. And they have like a demo of a game called Cave of Magic, which is like what this is sort of, the style of game that they're encouraging you to play. And then they have, their other examples. And I believe the prize is a Raspberry Pi 4. Is that the?
Yeah, the 2 gig version. So the middle of the ground version, which is pretty good. Again, worse things can happen to you than winning a Raspberry Pi 4.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, so, I mean, for this, you almost would have to have had an idea ahead of time. I don't know how quickly I could come up with a text adventure game and graphics. So I suspect most people who enter these things have some ideas in mind already.
This is straight up ANSI art.
Yeah, some of them are, yeah.
Yeah, it looks really neat.
So it's got a link to... So again, it's all using a system called Adventuron, which then they have a link to like tutorials on it. So it's obviously like someone wrote this adventure creation system and they're trying to promote it through game jams, and they're willing to, contribute $50 towards the course of promoting their game engine, but good for them.
Yeah.
But they have a thing, it's similar to like Twine in terms of like the UI that you use to create a game. Not particularly difficult, you just, make some basic graphics and have a story and choices and so on. You could probably do some, you might not be able to do something like Radical Dreamers on here, but you could do something like, what was that game? Mindscape, something like that. You could probably do a game like that, or what was the Outlaw game, Troll's Tale, something like that. You could easily do. Mystery House, you might be able to do on here.
It looks like really simple programming too.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much like Python.
So let's see. I know there's been a couple of different stories about these, but those arcade 1-up cabinets that you can buy at Walmart? They are now doing cocktail table versions of them, including a Street Fighter one with split screen. So you're each looking at it the right way. Someone's not playing upside down.
I had to watch a video of this to see it in action, and it hurt my brain. First of all, it's a very busy top on it, and then the split screen, that just threw me off.
Yeah, I actually kind of like it. If I had room for this, I have more room for this than I do one of their cabinets, and I would be more likely to play something like this. And it's not just Street Fighter; they got 10 different Street Fighter games on here. Not 10, but you know what I meant. And then Final Fight, it says Ghosts and Goblins, 1944, Strider, Commando. So you're getting a lot of games on this thing. And
it seems like you have more room for this, but I learned the hard way that cocktail cabinets actually take up more space because you have a chair so unless you're using it as a table.
Yeah, I would use it as a table too. I guess I have to see how waterproof it is. So if I
I'm sure it's pretty safe. But what is it? $500 for these. So seems more expensive than the upright.
So yeah, it depends. Sometimes you can get, occasionally you can find cocktail original retro cabinets really, really cheap. So an old friend of mine had a Donkey Kong Jr. cocktail cabinet, and it was something where I don't know if it was his church or someone else. It was through a church, had this old rec room. And it had kind of gotten into a state of disrepair and wasn't being used anymore. And they were cleaning out this rec room. And there was a Donkey Kong Jr. game back there. And they sold it to him for $200 for Donkey Kong, Jr. sit-down cabinet, which is a great deal. But what was an even better deal is they lost the keys to the quarter slot, to the tin with the quarters.
Was there $200 in quarters?
It was $175. It was it was completely filled, and he almost broke even on that machine.
That's great.
Now the one thing is that's a really painful cabinet game to play because the joysticks aren't. They're they stick out of the side of the panel, so you're playing at a really weird angle.
Yeah, and servicing those is not fun at all.
Yeah. Now, he knows how to do that kind of stuff, so he was fine with that. He was able to work on it a little bit. It had some other, minor defects, but it wasn't... it's totally playable. It's just not fun to play. Another game creation thing. Yandex Retro Game Battle 2019. Create retro games and compete for prizes. This is actually a Russian site, but I don't think they care what language you submit the games in. And this is specifically everything that you build on it has to run on an original ZX Spectrum.
Yeah, so count me out.
So you have to be able to read Russian, at least to understand the rules, and then program the ZX Spectrum. That's probably not a barrier for that many people. So we have at least one listener who can probably do both those things. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's 3 contests in our news so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of these, and I'm really trying to include more of them because I don't know if I'll ever have time to enter one of these retro game programming contests, but I just think they're a lot of fun to look at and of course talk about.
This next one is you too.
It is. Hold on. Oh yeah. Little bit off topic for our show, but the Chrono series is now available on iTunes, Apple Music, and Spotify. So, Square put a bunch of their soundtracks on these various services. Falcom has most of their stuff on iTunes and Amazon and maybe Google as well. I don't know about Spotify, but I think it's really cool that more companies are releasing their game soundtracks. And catalogs of like other stuff. So they have Chrono Trigger original soundtrack, DS version, which is the same as the Super Nintendo version, but with some extra songs, because there's a little bit of bonus content in the DS version. Chrono Cross, and then an arranged album that I really, really like called To Faraway Times, the Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross arrangement album, and then a couple Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross orchestral soundtracks.
Oh, I'd like to hear those.
Yeah. So it's just cool. I think it's cool. You can, if you have a Spotify account, I'm not 100% sure what Spotify is, because my solution is giant SD card in my phone is my streaming music solution. But I think it's,
so. This is probably good stuff to like work to.
Oh yeah, it is. I almost only listen to soundtracks when I'm trying to get work done because stuff with lyrics is kind of distracting.
Yeah. Probably the most confusing news item of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Intel adds, in quotes, retro scaling to Ice Lake CPUs to make pixel art games look more crisp on modern displays. So, what that means is on the newest processor, the one I was just complaining about in my new beautiful laptop, it has built-in hardware that helps with upscaling. So,
so this isn't all. This is a chip that's also a video chip. Is it? Is this? I don't know. I'm not familiar with this.
It's
chip.
Probably a. So these can have video in them, but I think this is actual CPU hardware that's doing the math, kind of like MMX or SSE.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I usually, here's the problem. Until I'm building a new computer, I usually don't spend a lot of time looking at what's the current, CPU standards and what are the capabilities. I mean, I'll research it a lot when I'm planning about, upgrade my computer. But it says it features Intel's Gen 11 graphics with 1 teraflops of compute performance for video. So
Yeah,
it sounds like
so
it's got an
the
integrated
built-in
GPU.
one.
Yeah, so this is something you would put in like a laptop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they actually call out my laptop. So,
Okay.
Now, it seems like you would have to recompile your code for this to work, but I could be wrong.
I don't think so.
For it to actually use, yeah, you're probably right.
No, I think it's changing.
It would just run better.
It's changing how the GPU's working.
Yeah, so this isn't like MMX. This is actually straight GPU.
Yeah.
Work. Yeah, so it's some kind of integer scaling. So it's all a bit above my head, but there's pictures on how it makes it look better, and yeah, cool. I'll give it a try sometime, and I'll report back if I notice anything.
And then RetroArch or Arch 178 released.
Yes, well, it's 178 version 3. So they kind of focused on bug releases and even new features for the same release instead of calling it like 1.179. I mean, and this is pretty huge. So if you remember a few episodes back, we reported on bsnes HD, which was the SNES emulator that upscaled Mode 7 into HD. That's now built into RetroArch. If your Apple computer has a AMD GPU, it'll be a lot faster. And there was a few things I wanted to call out here. On Android, it has bsnes HD as well. And something pretty fun, Flycast, the Dreamcast emulator, is now 30% faster. Well, at least the Windows CE games. And then there was one huge bug that bugged a lot of people, but I never ran into it. The MuPen 64 Plus, did I pronounce that right? MuPen 64? Yeah, I've never said it out loud before, even though I've read it thousands of times. The N64 emulator. On Windows, it used to, for some reason, have a bug where it took 10 seconds to start up, and now it's instant. And yeah, and then for the next release, they're working on more cores for more emulation. So good on them. God, they're really cranking out releases, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a big team. I think they have a lot of contributors. I think that helps.
Yeah, and they have pretty clean code to work with, I think, too. Next one was, this is my favorite item of this week. I was laughing as I was posting this. This is on Kotaku. A basic version of Civilization running as an Excel spreadsheet. So this dude wrote some Excel functions, some macros and stuff like that, and created literally Civilization 1.0, the ancient part of it, in Excel.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing. It actually works, and it has simple AI and everything. You do terrain discovery. You have battles. Yeah. Out of all the projects you could do, I'm not sure why you would do this one. Maybe he was just trying to prove a point, but I just love it.
Speaking of game jams, it was part of a game jam, it said.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
Yeah, it was like...
I read right over that.
Yeah, it was a... I don't know if it was an Excel code jam or what. It seems like a weird thing. They just call this the One Lone Coder Jam. So...
In some ways, this was probably harder to do in Excel than in C++.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, the Excel macro language is at least really easy.
It's pretty much VB, right?
It's VB, yeah. It's a variant of VB6. So it's really easy to work with.
But there you go. That exists in our world now. And then one last news item here. ProjectPSX is a C# coded emulator for the original PlayStation 1. So this person, Blue Storm DNA on GitHub, coded in C# a fully, well, not fully working yet, but a kind of alpha state PSX emulator.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows it working. And, it says in here, it's just like the Genesis game you created, this is a passion and learning project for him. And, yeah, he has Final Fantasy VII and Crash Bandicoot working on this. And he goes through, like, how he started it out and what's working and what's not. But,
yeah. Yeah, he basically calls out that, it's not a particularly good emulator yet, and it's more of a can I do it project. And that's really my motivation for the stuff I'm doing. I'm not actually trying to make something very good. I'm just attempting to see what I can actually pull off.
Yeah. And pretty cool, if it's projects like these two that are still small enough to where if you're trying to figure out how a PlayStation works, this is a great place to start because it's not like staring at the sun. It's still an early project. You can kind of see the beginnings of it, now it can boot up this game. So you don't have all this spaghetti code you have to dig through just to figure out how it works. You know what I mean? But that is news.
All right. We're going to do a similar-ish topic to last week.
We had to.
Episode.
Right? We had
episode, to. Last interval of time that we recorded.
So last episode we did the US launch of the TurboGrafx 16. We were going to do a different topic this episode, but it is 20 years since 9999, which is the Dreamcast launch. So we're doing the Dreamcast launch and some SDKs for it in case you want to program your own Dreamcast game.
Yeah. So we'll have kind of a few links later on that we'll talk about. If you're curious about, doing a Dreamcast game, I admit, I thought about it just because it's such a relatively easy system to develop for, because you can use pretty modern tools and unless, you can do a solo person game because you can make a 16-bit style game on it. You don't have to make a Dreamcast style game on it where you need a team of artists and renderers and all that stuff.
Were you working in the game store on 99.99?
No, I was working as a programmer by then.
Oh,
I
wow.
was long out of game store business. Well, it's not true. The last time I worked in the game store, I went back to work one Christmas season because I needed money in 1997. So the Christmas season 97 was the last time I worked in the game store.
Okay.
But I was working as a VB6 programmer at the time. So that was really, really exciting. And I was, I didn't buy a Dreamcast. I was, I took kind of a long hiatus from games while I was in college. So, like, end of 99, I finally got around to buying a Nintendo 64. Because I really wanted to play, like, Zelda 64 and that kind of stuff. Because, all that stuff that I missed. And Dreamcast was just sort of like it was almost like background noise for me. I just wasn't really all that interested. I think I had accepted that Sega was probably going to find a way to mess it up. Because their last two systems had essentially tanked. The Saturn was a good system. I like a lot of Saturn games, but it really wasn't competitive against the PlayStation. And then, the whole, 32X, which was the system before the Saturn, I don't know, what does it have, 20 games? Wasn't like a real big success either. So I was kind of skeptical. Which is good, because I did buy a Dreamcast eventually on the day that I heard it was being discontinued.
Yep.
And that's probably what most people did. You'd be crazy to have not done that.
I got mine for $35, and it felt like a whole new, current gen system when I got it. And shortly thereafter, I got the keyboard and all that stuff, so I had Lynx on mine for whatever reason.
I did a Nester DC on mine. That was about it.
Yep, I had that too.
And that didn't really run that well. I shouldn't have done that.
I didn't notice. I thought, maybe I didn't play enough games in it, but I didn't really notice it playing too bad. But back to the 99.99. The game I got with mine was Ready to Rumble 2, which was a launch title. Or Ready to Rumble, I'm sorry, not 2. That was a really fun game. I'm looking through these. How many? It actually launched with a lot of titles.
Yeah, what's weird is I don't see Crazy Taxi on this list, and I could swear that was a launch title, but again, I wasn't paying attention, so I guess it was not.
House of Dead 2, what a huge game to have at home,
Yeah, if you're into that style game. This is the problem. I kind of look at the Dreamcast launch list, and NFL 2K turned out, I thought the 2K NFL games were better than the Madden games. I think everybody else felt that way too.
Blitz was a great game too.
Yeah, Blitz was fun too, but you had it on Nintendo 64 probably already. So there's really a lot of kind of graphically impressive games on here, but nothing on this list that was going to make me run out and buy a Dreamcast. I said, it really wasn't until I knew I wouldn't be able to get one again that I was interested in getting one. And then, of course, I found a bunch of games for it I liked. The game system I played a ton of in the zeros. But yeah, this launch title lineup wasn't, I don't know. I saw a demo of Sonic Adventure at Babbage's or Software Etc. or Electronics Boutique and thought, okay, that looks pretty good. I think it's a good adaptation of Sonic to the 3D format. But it
had good music and all that. Soul Calibur, incredible game. Power Stone, a great game. Power Stone is one of those games that if all your friends were into it, it would be so much fun, but no one you knew cared.
Yeah.
So you'd play it and you'd say, "This is a great game," but I'm done playing by myself.
Yeah. Sega did a lot of smart things with it. Dreamcast was kind of ahead of its time. It had 4 controller slots, which was a great idea. Let's not make people buy extra adapters. That's something they must have learned along the way. So that was kind of cool. And the screen within the controller idea was almost 20 years before another system did that right. So that was a long. The Wii U kind of did it okay. Just the screen was like almost too big and bulky to be useful. And the Switch maybe, I mean the Switch is it's hard to compare it to the Dreamcast LCD thing, but this idea that I can have a system where I can both play offline and on the TV is pretty cool. And it had early online capabilities, right? It had to be the first system with
built-in modem.
Yeah, I say built-in online capabilities. I mean, obviously other systems had X-Band and the Nintendo thing where you had to turn your radio to the right station to Satellaview and.
But this was
like a really
designed
like the modem is built in, and there's a web browser in the box. So yeah, it was really ahead of its time, I thought. But I guess people didn't buy it that rapidly because I think they were worried Sega was going to abandon it, which they did. And PlayStation 2 just looked like a better system. And at that point, PlayStation was really the dominant home console. Not that Nintendo 64 was doing badly. It's just the PlayStation was the more dominant system, and everyone assumed the PlayStation 2 was just going to be better than the Dreamcast.
And, gosh, if the Dreamcast had DVD playback capabilities, people would have bought it for that because it came out before PlayStation 2.
Yeah,
and a lot of people held out for PlayStation 2 because they didn't want to buy a DVD player and a game system.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah, it was just a little too soon. I think they probably would have had to have jacked up the price a few, I don't know, $100, $50.
Yeah.
How much would it have? Remember, DVD players weren't super cheap back then.
Yeah, and there was a license. What was it, like an MPEG 2 license?
Yeah, there's a license and stuff. I mean, it just wasn't a given that. It was probably a really. I'm sure there were some really great arguments. That Sega had about whether or not to include it, but ultimately they didn't, and that's that. It probably would have gotten a head start because back then people were buying DVD players. I mean, I bought my first DVD player right around then. I mean,
so did I. It was called PlayStation 2.
Yeah, see, I waited a long time to get the PlayStation 2, and I just bought like a dedicated DVD player. I can't even remember. It was huge and it was silver. I don't remember.
And it played DVDs.
And you could play, Star Wars on it. Well, Star Wars wasn't out on DVD yet, was it? It was like a while before we got Star Wars on DVD.
No.
Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, it was probably Lord of the Rings was the big...
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah, I kind of curious to see if my kids would like Lord of the Rings. I'd try that. But yeah, so it was... It was like so close to being a great system, is what I guess what I was saying. It cheaped out a couple things. So it was modem instead of LAN support. Basically, you couldn't plug a LAN cable into it. You had to plug a modem into it. You could buy a broadband adapter for like $8 billion on eBay or something now. It had VGA out, but again, you had to have like an adapter for that. I don't think PlayStation 2 never even did VGA out. And then it didn't do Blu-ray, so it was just like so very close to being a system that could compete with the PlayStation 2.
But if you look at the Switch, it's all about the games, right? Nintendo's knocking it out of the park. Same with the Wii. It never held up to the other systems in terms of horsepower. And Sega was right there, and they had a ton of great games. They had a ton of great IP, but Sega of Japan just dumped it. I mean, it was selling. They weren't losing money on it,
Yeah, but they knew it was not going to. I mean, at that point, when they dropped it, the PlayStation 2 was out, and I think the Xbox and GameCube were coming soon. And I think they knew there was no chance of them competing.
Yeah, if they just held out a little bit longer, it wouldn't have been such a disaster. I mean, what do I know? I've never been in the game industry, so I'm just some dude with a microphone talking. But that's what my gut tells me. But you want to move on to the SDKs because that's really what made the system shine, I guess, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's weird how it's had like this it's one of these systems, I think, like the Lynx, where the the aftermarket of it is so much better than its original launch, right? Like, so like the Dreamcast in Lynx and a couple other systems they're like, they're like the Jimmy Carter of game systems, right? Like when they were on the shelf, they weren't doing real well, but then afterwards, they're now like well respected and have done a lot of good things since being active systems. And Dreamcast is definitely like that. And there's there's leaked SDKs, and you can go find like Sega's original SDK for the system, and you can install it. It's weird because this was like a late '90s thing, so you're thinking, oh, I'm going to put it on Windows 2000 or something, right? But no, Windows 2000 wasn't out when they were building this SDK, so you have to put it on like Windows 98 or not a joke, Windows NT4. It would run on. And Windows NT4 is actually, because in 99 I was doing most of my development on a Windows NT box. So yeah, in 99 I was doing most of my development on a Windows NT box. Like, it was great development OS. Not something you usually think about when you do you don't think about NT and game development in the same sense usually. But since then, people have created SDKs for modern computers. So the one that seems to be most active right now is something called Dream SDK, which has installer, has a lot of there's a lot of help on how to use it, but you can use this to develop Dreamcast games on a modern computer. You don't have to go get like a Windows 95 VirtualBox and try and install Sega's SDK that you got off some site and hope it doesn't have a virus and all that kind of stuff. It's actually a pretty like full-blown environment. So I think
you're programming it in Python. You're programming in Python, which is one of the simplest languages you can either learn or code in. So it's not like you have to learn C or something. And you can write a game pretty quickly with this thing. I mean, it's pretty straightforward in terms of game development, especially retro game development.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty cool. I mean, they kind of compare it to having a Dreamcast development box back in the day, in terms of what you can do. So it's active. They got some forums. You can go ask other developers how if you're stuck on something. I see, like, I'm going through the forum right now, and I see lots of like debugging questions and other stuff being answered. So it seems like it's a pretty active community. And what else did I have on here? Did I add Dreamcast hacking? Oh, there's a great article here about how the first person to crack Dreamcast copy protection did it.
I read that today. I never heard that story before, and it blew my mind. So these people actually stole a development box back in 99. That's wild. It wasn't some genius who was reverse engineering the copy protection. They just stole a box. I mean, then they had to do some reverse engineering with that, but I mean, the door is open at that point, Yeah, and then admitting it online, I suppose. Maybe that's not maybe that wasn't the smartest thing they've ever done, but I guess it. That couldn't have helped Sega that much, having it be so hackable right off the bat. Yeah.
Now, part of it is like the Dreamcast didn't have. It was a pretty advanced machine, but it didn't have an operating system. The operating system was actually on the game that you downloaded. Like, so you downloaded, but you installed. So you didn't install games back in the 90s. When you put the game in the spinny thing, it would boot the OS, and you would put your own OS on there. And one OS was obviously pre-Xbox, was Windows CE. And you could more or less run a complete version of Windows CE. I mean, obviously, like the printer drivers and that kind of stuff. So for people who aren't familiar, Windows CE was a version of Windows Microsoft made for mobile devices. Mobile are like,
Embedded.
Embedded device. Every now and then you will still see something like you'll be at some, hopefully not the airport, but you'll be at some place where there's a terminal that's crashed, and you'll see the Windows CE logo on the screen. Still.
Yeah, a lot of times, like at Walgreens or something, where you're if you have to print out a photo or something, places like that are
Yeah.
But a significant amount of their games were Windows CE based on Dreamcast.
Yeah, and I was thinking they would all be games that were originally Windows games that people ported, but they're not. I see a lot of things that were like PlayStation games originally. South Park, Chef's Love Shack was a PlayStation game. I wouldn't recommend playing it. It's awful. But Railroad Tycoon would have been a PC game, but then you got Resident Evil 2, which did not get a PC release. Maybe it did. I always think of that as being a PlayStation game first. But yeah, awful lot of these are now. Not surprisingly, a lot of the things that are just collections of arcade ROMs are Windows CE games, like the Midway stuff, the arcade Atari collections, that kind of stuff, because they probably just were running a Windows emulator behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a pretty good selection. I know, like at some point, I got a questionable sourced Windows CE built for Dreamcast. You could fire that up and you just be there on Windows CE on Dreamcast. I don't know what you do once you're there.
Was there a web browser or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like whatever was included on Windows CE. It wasn't particularly useful because you're with a controller. I do have a Dreamcast keyboard. I guess I could have done something with that. So that's kind of cool too. I mean, you can maybe, well, you know what? I mean, if you can pick up like a copy of Microsoft MSDN from 1999 at a flea market, you probably will get this SDK on those discs. You have a lot of MSDN discs laying around.
No, I don't. No.
Yeah. See, whenever I come across those things, I definitely have a hoarding problem with Microsoft, tooling, like MSDN tooling, that kind of stuff, because it would be these back in the days. Now it's all downloadable, right?
Yeah.
But they used to send you just these boxes or binders, depending what year it was, of just discs of every single Microsoft program that existed. And
yeah.
It was obviously now in '99. I was working at a development company that got these things all the time, right? So we would get just every quarter. They came out quarterly, roughly, like a stack just of everything. Windows 2000 beta, Windows 98, but I mean everything like in the history that Microsoft has ever produced was on one of these CDs. Again, now it's all download site. If for whatever reason you want to get everything Microsoft has ever produced, you still have to pay Microsoft. It's not free. And yeah, every quarter we would throw out the previous ones, and sometimes those things would end up in someone's home.
Yeah, I worked at a place in '99 that got busted for using MSDN, like Windows NT and 2000 install disks on all their computers without paying for licenses. So
yeah,
I think like we let someone go because he was a little bit moody, and he called like 1-800-PIRATE or something.
Yeah. This company I was at was definitely paying for the software. This was still like .com boom. We weren't really like a .com company, but we were still like a publicly traded software company. So like spending money, this was that era where just spending money was like nobody. We had free breakfast every morning, some semi-fancy office, expensive, the $5,000 chairs or whatever. I mean, we spent money. So like there was plenty of MSDN to go around because we just didn't care. We went from being worth $2 billion to being worth like $2.50, 1 month in the year 2000. I wish I was joking about that, but that's about it's pretty darn close to what happened. Yeah.
We have any more thoughts on Dreamcast 9999?
No, just real quick. I know we didn't prepare for this. Like, what is your most played Dreamcast game, do you think? Or favorite?
Oh,
Which might not be
jeez.
your most played.
Yeah. Well, I really like the Bang.io on Dreamcast.
Okay.
That's a great game. Ready to Rumble 2 on Dreamcast, I really like. Oh, man. Then there's a ton of games that I really haven't had a chance to play that I know I'm going to love, like the Arcadia and kind of those kind of games.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I like I like the on games like House of Dead 2 and stuff like that. And I know I'm like reading off this list right now, even though there's way more games that are on this list. But Soul Calibur, I just remember playing that over and over and just not getting sick of it.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think like most hours into the game, probably like either Shenmue or Grandia 2, just because they're long games. And I did really like Shenmue. I thought Shenmue was a really, great idea for a game. I have the PlayStation 4 remake. I still have to sit down and play it. Because so much of the game is set in fall, I'm actually, like, I keep telling myself, like, I'm going to play it in October through December, like the kind of the time of year it's set in. And then I always forget to do that. Maybe this year, we'll see. And then Grandia 2 is just, it's a really cool RPG. The story kind of goes way off the rails at some point. I mean, it goes into just ludicrous JRPG story mode eventually, but it was a lot of fun and really, really great soundtrack. But when I fire up the Dreamcast, the games I'm most likely to play are Crazy Taxi and Bust-A-Move 4. Those are kind of my go-to games on the system. I still think it's a great port of Crazy Taxi. I know maybe some other ports of it are like technically better, but I like the controls, and I like the the different game modes on the Dreamcast version.
Yeah. I mean, some of the famous games like Space Channel 5, both Phantasy Star Onlines, I haven't had time to dive into. They're all on my list to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Phantasy Star Online. It's in the game. I really like the soundtrack, and I like the battle system and the setting. It's just kind of a boring game. Like, it clearly is meant for team mode. Otherwise, it's kind of a really slow grind if you play it by yourself.
And then I remember Tony Hawk 2 on it, that being the game of okay, wow, this is better than PlayStation, the first obvious sign.
Oh.
Yeah,
I guess I should say sampler disc is also my go-to on Dreamcast, because I at one point on eBay bought like every Dreamcast sampler disc in a box. Someone just had a box of like Dreamcast samplers, and they didn't want very much for them. So yeah, that's another one. Dreamcast sampler, very popular with me.
Yeah, Jet Set Radio, which is one I'm kind of saving up for a future episode. I never knew the difference between Jet Grind and Jet Set. Maybe that's just where it's released. But again, I have that one on Steam now, so that's probably where I'll play it. But yeah, should we do some game club?
Yeah, let's cover the game club games.
So, want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
I could do. So I picked Alien Crush. I picked it because I'm a huge Devil Crush fan, and I mean, I own Alien Crush. I have forever. I just always liked. I never gave it its proper chance because I had Devil's Crush, which is its sequel, and it came out in 1988, and it was programmed by Compile, who actually did Puyo Puyo. I had no idea before doing a little bit of research. And yeah, this is a pinball game. Unlike its sequel, it only has 2, I guess, floors.
Kind of 2.5.
Yeah, it's kind of it's strange. And
there's that like room where you're fighting the dragon thing.
Yeah, well, there's and those are like the bonus rounds, right?
Yeah, because it's not like a full board. It's like a room where you're kind of playing this. It's not Centipede, but a Centipede-like thing.
Yeah, and those are my favorite parts. Unlike its sequel, those are my least favorite parts. But the reason why I never gave this the chance is because the physics just seemed to. I don't know if it's just different or off, but this time I really sat down and gave it a good go, and I got used to it, and I liked it more than I thought I would. The graphics there's a little bit of lacking, I think, again, because I'm used to its sequel, but it's a pinball board with kind of an alien type theme, and by alien I kind of mean they ripped off the movie. Like, there's definitely a xenomorph or two. There's definitely some some Geiger skulls on there. And then there's some other funny things they're ripping off. Like, that's definitely a Metroid on the screen. Like, that is a Metroid, and that on the other side is a Mother Brain.
Yes, except it's also all like very H.R. Geiger inspired, right? Like, I know it seems like a Metroid ripoff, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but like it seems more like here are things that have a common inspiration.
Yeah, definitely. Because Metroid kind of took that from Geiger too. I mean, the first scene in the whole game, you know. But yeah, I would definitely. It's a pinball game, so how deep are you gonna go? You know, I did pre-order that new Switch pinball adventure game, Creature in the Well. I have not played it yet. I think it's... I forget if I just pre-ordered it or if it's already released, but it's another reason why I wanted to play this, to kind of get back to the roots of video pinball.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, what else can I say on it? Most people probably played this on, if you played it, because you probably didn't have a PC Engine, on the Wii Virtual Console, which also has a sequel, kind of, called like Alien Crush Returns. And wow, is that shovelware.
Yeah.
Wow. It is a mess. The original, just stick with the original or Devil's Crush, but and full disclosure, Devil's Crush is one of those games I've been saving. But yeah, you get a chance to dive in at all this time?
Yeah, I played it a bit. I mean, I spent a lot of time in what I'll call the Centipede Battle level. I know it's not the real name.
Yeah.
Because that part's pretty easy, and you can play that for a really long time.
You can, yeah.
So I was really, really spending a lot of time there. Yeah, I mean, overall, I like the game. I mean, I like most pinball games kind of about the same. Like, it's not quite the same as playing a real cabinet, but it's pretty good.
The thing is with Devil's Crush is, and I said Devil's Crush on purpose, is that it has its graphics, its physics, and most importantly, its music. It's legendary. In this, the music is there. It's not bad. You know what I mean? There's just such a big difference between the games that's why I think this gets less fanfare. Deservedly, I think. But yeah, there you go. Alien Crush. How about your game?
Well, I picked Secret of Mana, a game I have been playing a lot on the Super Nintendo Classic, and it's a game I'm a little bit mixed on. I mean, it has one of the best soundtracks on the Super Nintendo, but easily one of the top 5. And you know, like graphically, it's sort of reminiscent of Chrono Trigger. I mean, I know they started as the same game and then forked. It doesn't play anything like Chrono Trigger. Like, overall, I like the game, but I feel like it's a 5-hour game that is padded out to like 40 hours just because you have to do a lot of grinding. Like, if you didn't have to gain levels in the game, the story itself is pretty short. Like, the dungeons aren't that big, and you know, the world's not very big, and there's not a ton of story. So it's like kind of a short game where, you know, because of the leveling system, you know, your characters gain magic, and then you gain magic levels by using magic, but you don't have a lot of magic points. So you kind of, it's a weird incentive where, like, you kind of want to save magic because you don't have a lot of magic points, but if you don't use it, then you don't gain levels. So what ends up happening is you gain like a new magic. You gain like fire magic or earth magic or whatever. And first thing you do is you go to a town, and then you walk outside the town and you cast spells nonstop for 30 minutes and go back in the town and recharge, right? Just doing that back and forth. Like, cast spells just constantly, go back and recharge, go back out, cast spells again. Because in a dungeon, what might happen is if you're casting spells while you're in the dungeon, you really need the spells for the boss fights in the dungeon. Because most of the boss fights seem to be pretty easy if you have leveled up magic. Like, you can just wail on them with magic and take out most bosses pretty quickly. And then the weapons, you get like a dozen different weapons. Not quite a dozen, but you get many different weapons. And same thing, you level them up by using them. Now, you're not going to level up every weapon for every character. But you're going to want to level up 2 or 3 different weapons for each character, so you can swap around, if there's a situation where you need more missile weapons or more physical weapons, whatever. So then you spend a bunch of time grinding up weapons, too. Like, if you took all the grinding out, it's like at most, 5-hour game. But you can't sell a game for $60 in the 90s. Like, today, you could make Secret of Mana minus all the grinding and sell it for 99 cents on iTunes and Google Play, and you'd do all right. People would be like, oh, yeah, this game was worth... I played it for 5 hours. It was worth 99 cents. No problem. But back then, you had to sell this game for $60, so there better be many, many hours of content.
So what did you play it on this time?
Super Nintendo Classic.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this is a Mode 7 game. Might be worth trying the bsnes HD.
Yeah, it is a little bit. There's a part in the game where you get... It's not an airship. You get like a dragon that you fly on. And that part uses Mode 7. It's not quite as smooth as some of the other Mode 7 games, so it probably would benefit. Again, overall, I overall like the game. I just, I think it's probably a little bit longer than it needs to be. I think it's just sort of kind of artificially long.
Yeah, and some of my favorite games do that as well. It was just a product of its time,
Yeah, exactly. Like, Phantasy Star 2 is probably also a 4 or 5 hour game if you didn't have to gain, like, thousands of levels, it feels like, to not die constantly.
I hate to admit, this is the first time in Retro Game Club history that I did not play this game. I had to watch some videos. When I had my Super Nintendo back in the day, I just skipped over this game. I'm not going to lie and try to be a hipster and say I bought it, on day one. But yeah, just because of work. And this is a game I've really always wanted to dive into, and I didn't want to just, start it knowing that in a week we're going to pick a different game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I really want to wait till I can dive into it. Yeah. Like you, I usually have a few retro games I'm playing and then a big modern game. And I think very soon I'm going to have a few retro games I'm playing and Secret of Mana,
Yeah, I would say if you're playing on an emulator, go ahead and get some cheat codes. Or a ROM hack or something where you just basically start fully leveled up. I think you'll end up liking the game more.
Yeah, probably.
Like when I do a playthrough of one of the Phantasy Star games again, I'm not gonna lie, first thing I do is I go and I hack the save game so everybody's maximum level. It just, I've already gone through the game the hard way, I don't have anything to prove. Just played at max level.
And there is the remastered version that came out, right?
Yeah.
Like a remake came out or something?
Yeah, there is, and I heard a lot of people complaining about it, and I want to go read the complaints and see how many of them are like, this is something broken in the remake versus, no, you forgot how Secret of Mana works.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? This is a good excuse for me to use the new bsnes HD because, I'll try F-Zero out on that, but... am I really going to play Pilot Wings just to see it look a little bit nicer? No, I'd rather play a game I could really dive into,
Yeah. Well, I'm going to warn you, it's a while before you get to where Mode 7 comes in.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's not going to stop me from playing it, but might as well do it in the new core if I can. Anything else you want to say about it?
Nope. No, I mean... I overall like the game. Just I encourage people to cheat if you just want to try it out.
Well, we did have some listener feedback. I don't know if it was about... We have some about the games here. I'll start our feedback. Zach, who runs our Facebook, asked a Facebook question of the interval of time. What retro game would you like to see remade into modern consoles? And Sean writes in saying a remake of Magic of Shirazade. What game is
Scheherazade.
that? I have never heard that pronounced out loud before.
I think I got it right.
Wow, I'm gonna have to see who made this game. And this, oh yeah,
Yeah, I think so. This was a. I was thinking of it as being like a
fairly
sort of
early game.
Obelius-ish game. I don't know if you've played that, but that's what it most reminds me of, I guess. And yeah, I think it would benefit from a remake because it's one of those games where it's really close, I think, to being a great game, but mechanically is a little awkward. Like, if you could kind of fix the problems with the game, you'd have something that's, not Zelda quality, but, pretty close.
Interesting. That's why a remake would probably be pretty cool.
Yeah, because you could just barely fix it enough to make it good.
And then Robert from Ohio recommends remaking Zelda 2. And the same way they kind of remade Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap, which I played through. That was beautiful. And he said they could actually give, in quotes, error something to do.
Yeah, great translation mistake there. Zelda 2, I think I like it a lot too. I mean, I realize there's ways you could improve it and make it a little bit more accessible for people. I think it's maybe the least accessible of the Legend of Zelda games. I think it's really high difficulty. I could definitely finish it back in the day. I don't know if I could finish it today.
That's one of those games I finished. Oh my God, I died so much. I have that red and black Ganon laughing in my face tattooed to my brain.
Yeah.
But
well, the key is there's a couple of 1-ups hidden on the map, right? But you can only use a 1-up once. Like, the 1-ups don't respawn on every new game. Because it's the 80s. So my only advice in Zelda 2 is when you're ready, don't get any of the 1-ups. And when you're ready to go after the last dungeon, it's going to be boring, but walk around the map and get all the 1-ups before you make the run at the last dungeon. Because you're going to use every single one of them.
That is good advice. I feel like I beat it way back in the day. I feel like I did, but it would have been so long ago, and it is one of the only Zelda games I haven't gone back and played. Mm-hmm. I still have it, so it's going to happen. But yeah, thank you, Robert, for that email.
Majors writes in to touch on a few things we talked about. He was talking about my straight line driving game, and he gives us a link. Maybe it'll make its way into the show notes about a demo game that is just driving in this straight line on the TurboGrafx. Except this is a first-person view. I was going overhead view. But yeah, this looks pretty cool. I mean, I think it's a really nice demo. Like, if you I don't understand the math behind doing a first-person driving game very well, so I never really considered. I realized I could learn the math. Like, I knew the math, I'm sure, when I was 19, but I don't know it anymore. Also, a link to something called the MD Fourier project, which I don't think we've talked to.
Yeah, we've mentioned this.
We have. Okay, this is on.
I think we mentioned it after he sent us this email.
Oh, yeah, we did mention this before. Yeah. Okay. So you can cut that part if you want. So he had a friend who used with the Sega channel. He had a friend who owned an X-Band and used the X-Band for his first email address, and thought it was funny that you would have to type the email address using a D-pad, or your email. That sounds horrible. It sounds like that Onion video where they spoofed Apple making a laptop with only one button.
Yeah.
Little bit of Genesis pad technology talk again about how the way the Genesis communicates with the console, with the controller. The way the controller and the console communicate with each other is through like a polling system, which is a little bit different than how like a Master System or 2600 pad work. I know because when I plugged like 2600 controllers into my test ROM, it would like think the A button is held down all the time and a bunch of other kind of weird stuff. But he mentions if you want to like convert a Genesis controller to work on a MSX, you have to like do a bunch of work to like redirect the PCB. And he says it's a fairly easy hack. I'm not real good with soldering, so it's not an easy hack for me, but that's apparently a popular thing. And also mentions being a latchkey kid in summer vacations from the TV. But there was an arcade that he could at least travel to nearby. Yeah, we had a shopping mall not too far from my house that we could walk to. Although technically I don't think we were supposed to, but, we didn't have Nest cams in the 80s, so anything goes. TurboGrafx 16 listserv. I think it's almost impossible that he and I were not on the same TurboGrafx listserv at one point. But he mentions like he would go to this flea market and there's a guy that sort of sold TurboGrafx games and he seemed to be the only person ever buying any games from him. So one day he just cut him a deal to buy all the TurboGrafx stuff.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, and then he traded a lot of it on listserv. He said one of the things he got was 10 sealed Alien Crush games.
There you go.
Yeah, you can buy a car with that today.
Yeah.
He thinks there was a Die Hard store in Texas, and that they were in fact the same company as the magazine. I think they were the same as the magazine I think the magazine and Die Hard Game Fan store were indeed the same thing. Same parent company, because I could swear the magazine at some point talked about their locations, and I think there were 4 of them or something. Some really small number of stores. And then some of our previous Game Club games, not really interested in Bully, but did listen to the soundtrack, which he said sounds like a 70s spy movie, which is
not far off.
Very true. Yeah. It does, yeah. And then Burger Time, also not a huge fan. Mostly played the arcade and Intellivision version, and likes the Intellivision version a lot, and notes that it was later on a pack-in game, which I did not know that was a pack-in game, or I didn't either. And forgot about it. And yeah, it's a very, very good arcade port overall. So yeah, absolutely. If can't imagine it's an expensive Intellivision game, because it seems like they produce so many of them, and if it was a pack-in, there's got to be 1 billion copies on eBay at this point.
Yeah.
And because it's a licensed game, it's never on like an Intellivision collection.
Yeah, like $4 you could get it for $6.
Yeah, you can go all the way up to like $8 and get it with a box. The box art is worth $8.
Here's a Dreamcast development GD writer you could get for $5,000. GD ROM writer. It's pre-owned though.
Oh, okay. As opposed to all those brand new Dreamcast GD ROM writers floating around eBay.
Still in box. Well, yes, Sean Robert Majors, thank you so much for those emails. And thank you, Zach, for keeping Facebook rocking. The community is pretty solid now.
So, first off, if people want to email us, how do they do that?
Email at retrogameclub.net. That is email at retrogameclub.net, which I realize is hard to type in if you're using Xband or your Dreamcast web browser.
Yes, if you can send us an email, though, from a retro console, that would be great.
That would be incredible.
That would be really awesome.
What is your new Game Club game?
Yeah, that's a good question. What is it? Oh, Wolfenstein 3D. That's what I put down, which is sort of maybe a little preview of our next topic also.
Yes, and I've also been playing it a lot, so thank you for
Yeah, I was actually playing it because I was rearranging some systems and I wanted to make sure my Jaguar was still hooked up correctly. So
I am going with Ikaruga because we were talking about Dreamcast, and this is on Switch and a few other systems, and I have those controllers that you can flip your Switch, so you're playing it like in vertical mode. That I still need to try that out, and this is a great game to try it out with. So again, it's always so hard not to talk about the games we just chose.
Yeah, I might have a hard time playing this one because I don't think I own it on anything, and I don't have a Switch yet. I'm gonna have a Switch in a couple weeks whenever it comes out. I mean, I realize the Switch is out. I meant I pre-ordered. I told the story on the show a few episodes ago about my frantic text to my wife to please pre-order this thing, even though it turns out the pre-orders never sold out, and how I don't really know what color I'm gonna end up getting.
That is funny.
No, I don't care. Give me the pink one. I honestly don't care. I mean, like,
This is on a lot of systems. Well, arcade if you have the ROM, Dreamcast, GameCube, Windows, Steam that is, and Switch and PS4.
There's not a pink Switch Mini. I'm actually kind of disappointed because that would be really easy to find.
Yeah, and hard for someone to steal and claim it's theirs.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, you understand? Like, I use bright colored phone cases because I don't care.
It's yours.
I'm not ashamed to walk around with a pink phone case. I can find the thing.
Yeah.
What is, like, a jock gonna beat me up because I have a pink phone case?
We do live in a dystopian future,
Yeah,
so
well, who knows? I don't think I'm gonna have a problem with that. This isn't pink; it's more kind of purple, but it's really easy to find in the dark.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
If you all play any of those games or any of our old games or really anything retro, please write us. Email at retrogameclub.net.
Mm-hmm.
It's my favorite part of the show, so please write in. And I think that ties it up.
Yeah. So thanks for listening.